I'm Kesenya, and we're going to be looking at what's coming up this week, the week of October the 6th to October the 14th in the skies. So we're going to start with October the 6th. This is going to be an interesting day because we have Mercury, who will be conjuncting exactly the star Speaker in the sky. Now, the star Speaker is a very angelic star. When it's in the natal chart, conjunct the moon, the sun, or an angular house, like a cusp, house cusp. We find that it gives the person great artistic qualities, a very sweet disposition, a gentle nature, very charming and beguiling in the best possible way, not in a manipulative way. So it's considered to be an angelic star, a spiritual star, a star that gives a great deal of access to spiritual realms. And so when we've got the planet of communications, we've got the planet of intellect and how we think and how we reason, how we learn, conjuncting this star for a day on the 6th of October, we can expect that our communications are going to be a little more angelic, if you like, or a little more gentle, or a little more coming from a good place in our heart, with the right motives and so forth. So this is going to be a beautiful day, October the 6th in Australia, and October the 5th everywhere else in the world when this occurs. Interestingly enough, this is also the day that we find that Venus will be going retrograde. Now, I'm not going to talk in length about that because it's very interesting, but most astrologers have done videos on this topic, and there is plenty of information out there about Venus retrograde. But suffice to say, it's going to be a very impactful time for anybody. Here's Venus here in the early degrees of Scorpio. Venus will retrograde at 10 degrees of Scorpio. It will stop moving forward in the sky, and to our our observations here on Earth will look like it's turning backwards at 10 degrees is where it will make that change. So it's going to retrograde back over the next month or so. 42 days is usually the length of a Venus retrograde, back into Libra to about 25 degrees, which will be where Mercury is currently sitting with Speaker. So Speaker's roughly at the late minutes of 23 degrees of Libra. So Venus is going to make it like a 2-degree difference conjunction there when it retrogrades back. And so this is going to be very important, and this is a pivotal. Mercury and Speaker are sitting on this pivotal point that has to do with the Venus retrograde shadow period point. So Venus will retrograde, go backwards in the sky to this point, stop still, and turn forwards again. So there's going to be a lot of triggering around this point in the sky over the next month. And of course, the nature of Speaker might come into this, which might just be our salvation from all the intensity of Venus turning retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. Venus only turns retrograde in a few signs. Libra is one sign that Venus does not initiate its retrograde motion in. So you'll never find Venus starting its retrograde in the sign of Libra. Always, if it's going to move into Libra at some point during the retrograde, it's because it has started in Scorpio, which is just an interesting side fact. But the intensity of Scorpio will be part of this Venus retrograde motion. But as I said, many astrologers online have talked about this, so we don't need to rehash old ideas. If you want to know more about it, check out Lada's YouTube channel, and you'll see plenty of information there by her astrologers talking with her and their own videos about Venus retrograde and what it will mean for you personally. But what else is happening in the sky this week that is going to be of importance, keeping in mind that this Venus retrograde is going to be impacting everything that happens? We're going to be internalizing anything to do with Venus issues, romance, love, money, relationships, the things we do for pleasure, where we get our self-worth and our self-value from. So these are all going to be issues coming up for all of us over the next month, particularly for anybody with planets in the early degrees of Scorpio, the early degrees of Taurus, the early degrees of Leo, and the early degrees of Aquarius, which just happens to be these early degrees of Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus are the same degrees that were triggered by the eclipse. So back in July. So whatever was triggered for you by the eclipse back in July can actually be impacted now by this Venus retrograde motion, and you might find issues that have come up from that will come up again from the eclipse, will come up again at the end of this Venus retrograde period, when we make the final revisit to those issues and sort them all out, so to speak. Let's hope. But so what else is going on in the sky? Well, this is what's happening on the 6th and the 5th everywhere else in the world, apart from Australia. I will just say, further to the Venus retrograde issue, one thing that is fascinating is that Venus turns retrograde on 10 degrees of Scorpio, which just happens to be the ascendant degree of Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. Now, I find that very interesting, because the whole nature of Jupiter's year traveling through Scorpio, here's Jupiter here in Scorpio, has been about bringing up issues that have to do with women and the exploitation of women, hidden things that have been hidden for years and years and years that are now exposed and brought to the light. And it just so happens this Venus retrograde, Venus is the feminine energy, is turning retrograde on the ascendant degree of these two fellows. And it's going to be really, really interesting the next month to see what else, comes to light around these feminine exploitation issues that have been occurring in the entertainment industry. So keep an eye on that, because it wouldn't surprise me to see something further come out about those things, maybe with, court cases or whatever that come up further in the next month or so, to sort of the early days of December, actually, until Venus moves retrograde and then back over this 10-degree point again for the final time once it's gone direct. So keep an eye on that. It's going to be interesting times, especially as Jupiter will be preparing to leave the sign of Scorpio. He'll be making his last hurrah, because whenever a planet reaches the last degrees of a sign, it's like they're at a party in Scorpio. Like, everybody's hanging out in Scorpio. There's lots of energy there. There's lots going down. And Jupiter gets ready to leave and to move into Sagittarius. He turns around at the lounge room door and says, "See you later, guys. I'm giving you my last hurrah. I'm making my presence known for the final time before I get out of here." So that's what Jupiter will be doing in the final degrees of Scorpio, which is going to be around the same time as this Venus retrograde concludes. So the issues that have come up for the world collectively, like I said, regarding women, the Harvey Weinstein thing, all those sorts of issues, exploitation issues, will again make a last hurrah before Jupiter then exits into the sign, out of Scorpio and into the sign of Sagittarius, where the new party is going to start. So that's happening around the same time, sort of end of October into November, as Venus is making its final moves through its retrograde period. So we're going to get a lot of these issues coming up. But enough about that. What else is going on? Monday the 8th of October, there'll be no particularly degree on degree aspects there. There's always aspects in the sky, but I'm looking for particular, 10 degrees kind of matchups, so that we get the full potent energy, and we can talk about that. But the one thing that is going to occur on the 9th of October in Australia, the 8th of October in other parts of the world, is which will be Tuesday in Australia, Monday everywhere else, is the new moon in Libra. So on the 6th and the 5th, depending on where you are in the world, we've got the moon here in Virgo. But by the time we get to Monday, Tuesday in Australia, Monday everywhere else, we're going to have the moon conjunct the sun in Libra. What does this mean for us? Well, the new moon in this October, it's similar to the one that to the eclipse that occurred in January. Actually, they're both making similar aspects to Neptune, and I don't ordinarily use the planet. I'll call it a planet, Ceres, in my astrology work, but it is really interesting that this moon, new moon conjunct the sun, will be conjuncting with Ceres. So we can expect to feel more sensitive, more sympathetic, more comforting towards our loved ones, as is the nature of this planet. And the new moon's going to bring some attention again to the rights and the conditions of women around the world, because this is the nature of Ceres. She rules single women, working women, single mothers. So we can expect that some issues regarding single women, working women, single mothers will come to light around the time of this new moon, which is happening Tuesday in Australia and Monday everywhere else. And so it's going to be an intense time and a focal time for women in those situations. But generally, let's talk about the new moon. Generally, it represents the end of one 28-day cycle and actually the beginning of another. So every time we have a conjunction in the sky of the moon and the sun, it's like new start, new beginning, and then it takes 28 days approximately for the moon to move all the way around and join up again. So we're starting a new 28-day cycle, and there's going to be a burst of energy, some initiative, some drive, some gusto that we can then put into whatever we want to achieve over the next month period. So it's an excellent time for making a fresh start, turning over a new leaf, starting a new project. Keep in mind that it is Venus retrograde, so if you're going to start some kind of new makeover of your house or your body, or some aspect of your life that's got to do with beauty, with femininity, even with relationships or with money, tread carefully, because Venus retrograde period is not a good time to start new things pertaining to the issues Venus rules. However, it is an excellent time generally at a new moon to make a fresh start, to also perhaps go inside and question your old behavior patterns, your belief systems, and look for new ways to make progress. And this is actually, in Venus retrograde period, an excellent thing to do. If you want to, really take some time out with a journal and a lovely cup of tea, and really just sit and go within. What am I feeling regarding relationships? Where am I at regarding relationships in my life? What do I want from relationships in my life? By exploring those things at this time, we will be able to begin something very new, very empowering, and very and fresh and liberating as we start on this new cycle of the moon. So the effects of the new moon, they last for 4 weeks, and so this will be until the next new moon. And so during this first 2-week period of the whole 4-week cycle, this is the best time to initiate new things, to start new things, because within 2 weeks we will have the full moon over here in Aries, and that is going to mean that the energy after this period will then start waning, lessening. Up until this point, the moon is growing. If you look in the sky, it's getting bigger and bigger until it reaches its fullness. So whatever we initiate now is going to, similar to the moon, grow, increase, strengthen, and begin to blossom in power and reach its fruition here. And then we might find that the energy sort of levels off a bit, steadies, and just becomes a gentle constant after this time. It doesn't mean things conclude, or we start something and then it flops. That's not what we're talking about. But all the impetus and the energy and the drive and the gusto that we can put in now over the next 2 weeks to whatever our goals are will pay off at the time of the full moon. So, for example, you might be looking to around your home. If it just so happens that Libra is your fourth house, the house of home, you might be looking to start some sort of new project in your home. Maybe you dig up a new garden bed and start planting it out. It's springtime here in Australia. A lot of people are doing that sort of thing. And then in 2 weeks' time, you've finally got it all completed. Everything's planted, everything's mulched, and the watering system's set up, and you stand back and survey your work and go, yeah, good job. That's going to look sensational in another couple of weeks when all the flowers bloom. So this is what we mean. You can put that energy and drive in now to creating something, to starting something, to really invigorating something in your life. And depending where Libra falls in your chart will depend on what area of life that new moon might play out in. Like I just described, if Libra was your fourth house, let's make Libra the fourth house there. So you'd have Cancer as your rising sign. Libra is the fourth house. That's where the energy would play out if you wanted to do something around the home or initiate something in your family relationships or some sort of dynamic with your, researching your ancestry or something like that might start for you around this time. But I'm not going to go into all the signs. If you know your rising sign, you would then be able to figure out where Libra might fall for you and then in what area of life that might affect you. If you're not aware of this, if you don't know what your rising sign is, if you don't know what house it would then invigorate and what that would mean for you, then feel free to get a reading. It would be my pleasure to help look at your chart and figure out different things like that for the future. All right, so the next day we come to is Wednesday the 10th. Now, this is actually another day when there's not a great deal of exact conjunctions or dynamics playing out. We've just got a fairly steady energy. The moon will separate from the sun a little, probably get up near Mercury there at the later degrees of Libra. So the energy starts to separate and the moon starts to begin its growing period. But on October the 11th in Australia, which is Thursday, and Wednesday the 10th in other parts of the world, we have Mercury. We have two really important things happening. Mercury will be opposing Uranus. So Uranus is in Taurus. Mercury will be here in the early degrees of Scorpio, and there's going to be an opposition. So there's going to be this exact opposition with Mercury at 1 degree of Scorpio and Uranus at 1 degree of Taurus. Well, what does this mean? Mercury is our mind, as I said before. It's the way we think, the way we process information, how we learn, how we communicate with others. It's also related to our skills and abilities with our hands, the things that we can create, and it connects to anything to do with communication. So it does have a connection to social media, marketing, all those sorts of things as well. So Uranus is the planet of very fast, very quick, very sudden, very unexpected energy. We can expect the things of Mercury to suddenly quicken. Our mind's going to be buzzing, with ideas and full of, light bulb moments. Oh, yes, I could do this, or I can employ my skills in this avenue, and we're going to have lots of ideas. Our mind is going to be perhaps almost a little bit hectic, actually. And this can actually result in us feeling a little bit tense, maybe a little bit scattered in our energy, especially in our thought processes. Our mind might be all over the shop. One moment we'll be thinking, this is what I'm going to cook for dinner. And the next moment we're going to be thinking, oh my goodness, I need to do this particular element of study. And then the next moment we're going to be thinking, I'm going to go here for the weekend. When we're just jumping from one topic to another and can't sort of be steady and focused. It's the nature of Uranus, unfortunately. That is a bit all over the shop sometimes with this zipping on-off kind of scattered energy. It can increase our nervous anxiety if we're that way inclined as well. So be kind to yourself if you are inclined to feel a little bit mentally anxious from time to time. Be kind, be gentle, allow yourself space to breathe, to get some balance and harmony at this time, because like I said, your mental energy is going to be really quite invigorated, which can be really helpful if you can control it and channel it well. But if not, and if you struggle with that sort of thing, be aware it's just going to be a passing day of that sort of feeling, that sort of tenseness, if you like, and it's not going to last permanently. Keep in mind that any recent issues pertaining to study, pertaining to communications with others, anything to do with learning or marketing things, perhaps if you have a business, they're all going to come back right on this day. And anything that you've overlooked, anything that you've rushed through, anything that you haven't given the proper time and attention to that you may have needed to do, might just come back to haunt you, and you'll have to readdress it on this day. Now, any kind of mental tasks that require patience and discipline, they're going to struggle, because in many senses, the planet Uranus is the opposite of Saturn. In fact, in ancient mythology, Saturn and Uranus were quite opposed. This was the father of Saturn, and Saturn sought to overthrow his father. So they're very, very opposed. They're very different energies. And Saturn is about discipline. Saturn is about structure. Saturn is about hard work and endurance. And Uranus comes along and makes this aspect to Mercury. And so we have the opposite to that. We have a day when we lack self-discipline. Sorry, get my words out. We lack self-discipline. We lack patience, especially for things like study, doing an assignment, preparing a project, that sort of thing. We're going to tend to rush it, tend to be really on off with it. Our energies, we're going to lack focus, so keep that in mind. It's not a good day for making plans, because our mental energy is going to be so erratic. It's also not a good day for signing contracts, because we're not going to be able to focus on the fine detail that we would need to pay attention to otherwise. So keep that in mind as well. What you can focus your energy on is meeting new people. It's a great day for making sudden new acquaintances that are really going to serve you well in the future. It's also a great day for making new discoveries, channeling some kind of light bulb moment, because Uranus is a planet that rules sudden impulses. Sorry, I'm not sure if my computer is being a bit laggy and not working properly, so my apologies if it's a bit funny. It's looking a little bit odd as I'm recording, so apologies if this is not coming through clearly. Yes, but there'll be opportunities during this transit to change your ways of thinking, to change your outlook, to change perhaps the way that you study, the way that you the way that you communicate, the way you're doing marketing at present. It might be just the impetus you need to really change things for the better. Uranus is all about liberation. Uranus is all about freedom and authenticity. Maybe you're going to be more authentic with your communication after this one-day transit. Maybe you're going to be a bit more, bit freer about how you do communicate with other people. Maybe your ability to, market yourself is going to receive an invigorated injection, and you're going to be able to do it in like I said, a much more authentic manner, where people can relate to you more because you're being more yourself. These sorts of things are what could unfold for you with this Mercury Uranus opposition. Be aware that we can tend to speak without thinking. This is the real downer of this particular connection in the sky. We can just bowl in and say whatever first comes to our head without stopping to analyze, is this going to hurt somebody? Am I going to be offensive? Am I really just talking rubbish, So take some time, slow down, think about what you're going to say before you say it, and you'll do much better. Now, Mercury is the trickster. He's the comedian of the horoscope. When we've got strong Mercury in our natal chart, say if we have Mercury rising, something like that, we might find a tendency towards comedy is very strong. in our character. So similarly, when we've got Uranus, this quick, sudden, genius-like energy impacting Mercury, for a day, we might find that we are able to play tricks on others, or they play tricks on us, all for fun, of course. And maybe our wittiness is enhanced, and we have a real ability to tell a joke well, or we might even just simply enjoy going to a comedy gig, something like that. So there's going to be some energy around the idea of fun and playfulness, trickery, and comedy. So enjoy. That's a good version of this energy. So now we come to the real punch this week, basically. This is the one that everybody's talking about, aside from Venus retrograde. We're looking at Mars square Venus. This is at the exact degree, and this is also occurring on October the 11th or 10th, depending where you are in the world. So we have Mars up here in Aquarius. He'll be at, let's get these right, hey? He'll be at around 10 degrees, as will newly retrograde Venus. There she is up there at 10 degrees. So they're going to make a square, a 90-degree aspect. This aspect is a tense one. And with Venus retrograde, it's going to be even more volatile, actually. It's a day when, well, we could have to, lock up our weapons, so to speak, because there's going to be this real tension in relationships that unfolds. Ordinarily, it can cause difficulty in sex drive and difficulty in relationships, especially relationships where there are already problems being experienced. So if you're having trouble in your relationship, don't leave it till this day to sort out and have a discussion with your partner. Sort it out beforehand, or at least wait till it's over, because it's going to be very volatile, a really intense day for relationships. And if you try and talk about anything, it's just going to erupt into an almighty argument. If you had a really healthy relationship, a loving relationship, a warm relationship where both people were confident and their egos were healthy and strong, you might actually find that this is a beautiful day for, having a little bit of fun, if you know what I mean. Because if you are well-rounded within yourself and your partner is, then the tension can actually bring some kind of a really dynamic kind of explosion, if you know what I mean, in the bedroom. So that would be enjoyable and wonderful. And if you can use that higher manifestation of this energy, then by all means do, because we would prefer that to happen than lots of marital arguments on this day. And if you're single, you're going to have a very attractive aura to others on this day. Your sexuality is going to really show a little more, not in negative ways, not going to be wearing sort of, booby tops or anything like that. We're talking more about the energy that you're giving off to the world around you. And that's what people respond to, actually, much more than, it's nice to see someone who's well presented and put together and dresses beautifully and, quite charming to look at. But really the long-term connection that people make with you is an energetic one rather than a physical response. That can happen initially. That's nice initially, but for long-term connection, we actually look for people that we respond to on an energetic level. So if you're single, you're going to be shining your beautiful sexuality in a really visible way on this day, in a good way. When I say visible, I hope you know what I mean. It's not about the clothes that you're wearing or how pouty you are or how flirty you are. That's not what we're talking about. You're going to just naturally have more sex appeal that's predominant in a really good way. But be careful not to lower your standards with regard to if you're single and looking for partners. Don't lower your standards on this day, because you're going to be more, I'll use the term animalistic. The drives are going to be stronger. Your sex drive is going to be far more predominant. And so you're going to need to just develop some detachment. Look at yourself. Okay, how am I behaving? Am I settling here in this dating situation? Am I going to regret this later? Try and really use some analysis and detachment before you end up following your animal instincts. Now, this physical tension that we've got between Mars, the planet of desire, and Venus, the planet of sensuality, they're squaring off. There's a tenseness. There's a frustration between the two of them on this day, which can result in volatility, angry outbursts, lack of self-control, impulsive behavior that we then regret. Ways to dissipate this, if you're single or you're married, is to get out and do some sport. Go for a jog after work or before work. Get that energy, that hostile energy out in some way. Maybe do a kickboxing class. Maybe go do some weights, or some kind of competitive sport if you're that way inclined. Play tennis or something. The other way is to enjoy yourself. That can also release some of this energy as well. So there are a few ideas. If you're feeling on the 11th, on Thursday the 11th or Wednesday the 10th in the rest of the world apart from Australia, if you're feeling really with this energy, then get out there and shoot some hoops or whatever you enjoy doing that really lets off steam. We've got to work with these energies in order to get the best out of our lives. And so the final interesting transit for this week that's of note, where we've got exact degrees playing out, is on October the 12th. This is Friday in Australia or Thursday the 11th in the rest of the world, and this is Sun square Pluto. Now, this Sun square Pluto it happens twice in a year, basically. The Sun takes a year to travel all the way around the horoscope, and Pluto barely moves. So there'll be one time, like he's in Capricorn Pluto at the moment, so there would have been a square back when the Sun was in the sign of Aries, squaring Capricorn, and now he's moved the whole 6 months on from that, and he's now in Libra again, squaring Capricorn. So what does this mean for us this coming Friday? Well, it can lead to ego conflicts with people in positions of power and authority. Now, both these planets have connections to authority. We've got Pluto, which is about like ultimate power, and we've got the Sun, which is about sort of authority figures, although more of a sort of in a fatherly kind of authoritative position. Now, coupled with this, there's going to be an increased desire or need, if you like, for you to feel like you're in control of particular circumstances in your life. So this might be what triggers these clashes, you know. Maybe that you've been feeling overlooked at work or something, and you've been putting in so much overtime and you haven't been getting appreciated for it. So you step up and say, well, you know, hey, I want some recognition for this. And it leads to, instead of, you know, reward for effort, it actually leads to an almighty explosion between you and your boss about what's expected and what you're putting in and what your boss wants you to contribute. So tread carefully on this day. It is a day when there can be a lot of destructive behavior that falls out of this circumstance. Like I said, it's a once in 6 month occurrence, so it can be quite volatile. And it can force you into a corner, so to speak, where you have to make a big decision. You know, am I going to stick with this to defend my position, or am I going to make a big life change? Now, it might not be just in the workplace. It might actually be with something to do with your family life. It might be to do with some kind of a business partnership. But say you've got something that you're marketing, and you are working with somebody who's you've got a product that you're producing, and somebody is marketing that product for you, and you might have such clashes on this day that you're like, I'm not using them anymore, and you make a complete change. You know, you go with somebody else instead. You find a new business to take on your product. So these are the kind of things that can result from a day where we've got the Sun square Pluto. So be prepared, you know, you might, especially if you've got planets around these degrees or opposite or squaring. So in this case, we're looking at the later degrees of Capricorn, the later degrees of Libra, the later degrees of Aries, and the later degrees of Cancer. If you've got planets there, you can expect to feel this energy a little more potently than others might on this day. But as I said in my previous videos, these are one-day transits. So the impact is not as intense as, say, a transit to your natal chart, where the energy would be playing out over like an extended period of time. Just for example's sake, say you had your Sun here and Pluto's been sitting there for the last couple of years. So the energy for that is going to be far more intense than the energy for the Sun square Pluto for a one-day transit. Hope that makes sense. Now, it's going to be an intense day, particularly if you've got natal planets at these degrees, as I've said. And you might find that it's going to trigger some deeply buried psychological issues within you that then come to the surface. This is the nature of Pluto. He's all about exposing what we keep hidden within us, bringing it to the surface and dealing with it. So this can happen. It might involve any fears that you've got around any area of life, fears of being in the spotlight, fears of being too intimate with someone and revealing your true nature, fears regarding being able to raise children, fears about work, you know, whatever, wherever your fears lie, even, you know, usually it's fears that we know are there but we keep hidden when we're talking Pluto stuff. Sometimes it can be psychological stuff that we don't know even exists. But, you know, any fears, anything regarding death, any feelings towards death. And when I say death, I don't mean like passing from this life into the next. I actually mean, you know, rebirthing into a whole new way of being. Maybe you've been feeling for some time this year like that you are about to, you know, you're just sensing life is about to change big time for me, and you are sensing that you are about to be born into a new era of your life. Sometimes we can pick up on these energies before it even happens, especially if we've got a lot of water energy in our chart. We're very sensitive to that sort of thing. And so you know, maybe we've got a sensitivity to this new rebirth experience that we're about to go through. That might come up and be triggered at this time. Maybe we've got a sensitivity to, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm losing control, like my life is spiraling out of control. That those issues might come up again on this day. Or maybe some kind of past experience might be brought to the surface again, maybe some sort of abuse experience. I mean, this is the nature, unfortunately, of Pluto's shadow side, which is about abuse, torture, manipulation, persecution, all those things. So if you've experienced that in your life and you haven't dealt with it properly, then the Sun square Pluto can trigger sort of a memory. It could just result in a day where you're really teary about something that occurred maybe in childhood or in your young adulthood that was traumatic and troublesome for you, and maybe there's an occurrence in your life where you're reminded of it on this day and you just spend some time grieving and crying about it all over again. And it's okay to grieve and cry about those things as much as you need to purge and move on and clear those things. So that could be triggered for you on this day, or it could mean that you're placed in a situation that reminds you of what happened to you, and you're given the opportunity, however brief it is in this one-day transit, but you're given the opportunity to readdress it and do things differently this time. You know, just say your boss exploited you when you were young and naive, and then suddenly you find yourself on this day in a similar situation with a new boss that's doing the same thing again, you know, exploiting your kindness or your generosity. And this time you say, enough, I'm quitting, you know, or enough, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. So you make a change and you stand up for yourself, or you head in a new direction in life. You know, you say, right, this is it. no more of this for me. So there's many ways it can play out on many different levels. Usually that will depend on what's happening in your natal chart as to what plays out, how intense it is, and how you react to it. But these are some of the examples of things that can come up on this day, which, as I said, is October the 12th in Australia. That's Friday, and October the 11th everywhere else in the world, which is a Thursday. Now, just to conclude, I will just briefly skim over some ideas behind Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde often brings fated events to our lives concerning the nature of Venus in our chart. So, Venus is a general planet. It rules love, relationships, money, etc., like I described before. So we can experience some kind of fated circumstance about money. Maybe some money comes to us. Maybe someone comes into our life who we've had a relationship with before. But generally speaking, when Venus is retrograde, it's about bringing back something from the past pertaining to the issues of Venus. So a lover from your youth, or that you broke up with ages ago comes back into your life or wants to reconnect or something, or some lost money that you had, or an experience where you lost money is revisited, and maybe you get that money back, or maybe you get an opportunity to rectify that financial situation. So there's a revisiting of the things that Venus represents. But it's all about sorting out karmic issues and resolving the past in order to move ahead, to move forward. A little bit like the eclipse energy, for those who saw my recent video about the eclipse fallout. It's about revisiting things in order to set them straight, and that's our freedom of choice, basically, with how we work with this energy. Do we incorporate it at a high level, or do we put our head in the sand and ignore it and then have to face it again in 8 years' time and deal with it then? So it's better to actually, if we get a visit from a past lover and they want to reconnect, it's better to process that and work through that this time rather than have to go through a similar process again in 8 years' time, however painful that might be. There's a lot of negative talk about Venus retrograde, but keep in mind that this Venus retrograde is going to connect with Neptune in a really harmonious type of way as well. Scorpio is, as a sign, is trining Pisces. So Neptune is about soulmates. Retrograde Venus can represent karmic fated events that we then have to deal with. Maybe someone might come into your life who you knew in a past life. Maybe you might actually meet your soulmate. Neptune rules that sort of thing. And if you've got a very strong Pisces in your chart, and Venus is obviously making this trine, if you're triggering exact degrees with this retrograde and this Neptune kind of involvement as well, then you might find that some soulmate comes into your life. So it's not all negative, but my advice would be, if you feel that you come across somebody who is soulmate material, and I've said this before in past videos, just do the friendship thing first. Establish a get to know you period, going out for coffee dates, not sort of jumping in a sack straight away, because you really need to wait till Venus is no longer retrograde if you want this relationship to be of substance and to last. So these sorts of things can come into our lives, but we need to act with wisdom and knowledge and understanding at this time in order to make the most of this energy. But the main thing we need to do with Venus retrograde periods is use this time to learn to love ourselves more. That is the really important work of Venus retrograde. We need to think about what brings us pleasure, what gives us joy, what makes us feel more alive, more beautiful, more feminine, and that includes men as well, who are adequately advanced to be able to embrace their feminine side of their character. What makes you as a man feel in touch with your feminine side in a healthy way? This is the time to explore those things and indulge in those things. taking care of ourselves, you know, doing what's needed to enhance our femininity, to enhance our feeling of being beautiful without having to go and get plastic surgery, without having to, you know, radically alter our hairdo, those things that aren't supported in Venus retrograde times. But it's the inner work that we're talking about, you know, journal about it, write about, oh, I feel most beautiful when. These are the things that make me come alive. These are the 5 things that I love to do to pamper myself. Really do the reflective work, and then when Venus goes direct, start implementing those things, using those things. Get a fresh haircut after Venus goes direct. Try a new makeup style after Venus goes direct. All of these sorts of things. But now's the time for doing the inner work. What gives you pleasure? What makes you feel beautiful? What gets you in touch with your feminine side? Reflect on those things. Reminisce about old partners. Clear away what is negative, what's held you back, and resolve to move forward in powerful ways with partners in the future so that you don't repeat old karmic habits and you can set yourself free. All this sort of work is what we need to do in Venus retrograde to really incorporate and enhance the positive side of this experience that happens every 8 years. So that's about all I've got to share for this coming week. I do hope it's a beautiful one for you. And we might close with a quick prayer for the blessing of the universe on our future week ahead. We just invite all the energies of the planets and the universe and the love that's out there for us all to really fill our lives with joy this week. May we handle these energies well, give us the wisdom to know how to act in every situation to work towards our highest good so that we can be more highly manifested individuals and work towards creating a greater collective consciousness. Amen. And thank you. And let's talk again next week.